An 8-year-old girl sends a desperate text to the wrong number asking for baby formula. The message reaches a motorcycle club president instead of her aunt. But what happened next changed everything for a struggling family. If this story moved you, like and share it. Your support helps us bring you more inspiring stories. Love isn't hidden behind appearances. My dream is to reach 1 zillion subscribers. Thunder Jackson stared at his phone screen, reading the text message for the 3rd time. At 47, the president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club had seen enough desperation in his lifetime to recognize the real thing when it appeared, even in a simple text from an unknown number. Please help us. My baby brother is hungry, and we don't have money for formula. Mama is working, but it's not enough. Can you send $20? I'll pay you back, I promise. Alice. Thunder's scarred hands, marked by years of motorcycle accidents and bar fights, trembled slightly as he held the phone. The message wasn't meant for him. The area code suggested someone had misdialed by a single digit, but something about the desperate politeness of a child asking for help hit him like a physical blow. 3 years ago, Thunder had been James Jackson, an insurance adjuster with a wife and 8-year-old daughter named Katie. Then came the drunk driver who took them both away in a single moment of twisted metal and shattered glass. The man who emerged from that wreckage bore little resemblance to the suburban father who'd coached Little League and attended PTA meetings. He'd found the Iron Wolves 6 months later, drawn to their brotherhood and their shared understanding that life could destroy everything you loved without warning. Boss? Tank Morrison, the club's sergeant-at-arms, noticed Thunder's expression from across the clubhouse. You look like you've seen a ghost. Thunder held up the phone. Got a text. Wrong number. Kid asking for baby formula money. The clubhouse, usually filled with the sound of pool games and motorcycle maintenance, fell silent. These men understood hunger, understood desperation, understood what it meant to be failed by the systems that were supposed to protect the vulnerable. How old? Asked Doc Rivera, the club's medic, and the closest thing they had to a conscience. Says she's got a baby brother. Doesn't say her age, but the writing. Thunder studied the message again. Sounds young, real young. Wrench Patterson, their treasurer, looked up from the Harley he'd been rebuilding. Could be a scam. People use sob stories to hustle money all the time. Could be, Thunder agreed. But what if it's not? The question hung in the air like smoke from their cigarettes. Outside, the Oregon rain drummed against the clubhouse windows, and somewhere in this same storm, a child was worried about feeding her baby brother. Boss, Tank said quietly, you want me to trace the number, find out where it came from? Thunder's finger hovered over the reply button. Every instinct told him to ignore it, to delete the message and go back to the carefully controlled life he'd built among men who asked no questions about the past. But Katie's face appeared in his mind, not as she'd looked in the accident, but as she'd been at 8 years old, full of fierce, protective love for anything smaller than herself. Yeah, he said finally. Trace it. But first, Thunder typed a response. This is Thunder. You texted the wrong number, but I want to help. Where are you? The reply came within seconds. Millbrook, you're not Aunt Jenny. No, sweetheart, but I'm someone who cares. What's your address? A pause that lasted 3 minutes, then 1247 Oak Street, apartment 3B. Are you going to call the police? Thunder felt his heart break a little more. An 8-year-old child was so desperate she'd risk texting a stranger, but terrified that help might come in the form of authorities who could separate her family. No police, he typed, just someone who wants to make sure your brother gets fed. What's your name? Alice Martinez. My brother is Tommy. He's only 4 months old. Thunder looked around the clubhouse at men who'd been written off by society, men who'd found family in the brotherhood of outcasts. Tank, Doc, Wrench, get your bikes. We're going to Millbrook. Boss, Wrench said carefully, Millbrook's 2 hours in this rain. You sure about this? Thunder was already reaching for his leather jacket, the one with President, stitched across the back in letters that usually made people step aside on the street. Tank, how much cash we got in the emergency fund? About 800. Bring it. Doc, Grab your medical bag. Something tells me this family needs more than just formula. 20 minutes later, 4 Harleys rumbled through the Oregon rain toward Millbrook, their riders united by a mission none of them fully understood, but all of them felt in their bones. Thunder led the formation, his phone secured in a waterproof case as more messages arrived from Alice. "Thank you for wanting to help. Mama doesn't know I texted anyone. She would be mad because she says we handle our own problems." "Where is your mama now?" Thunder had texted back. "Work. She cleans offices at night and serves breakfast at the diner in the morning. She sleeps for 2 hours between jobs when I watch Tommy." The pieces of the puzzle were forming a picture that made Thunder's jaw clench with familiar rage. A mother working herself to death while her 8-year-old daughter carried responsibilities no child should bear. "Alice, when does your mama get home?" "Not until 6 a.m. But don't worry, I know how to take care of Tommy. I heat his bottles and change his diapers and everything. I'm very responsible." Thunder had to pull over for a moment, his vision blurred by memories of his own daughter's fierce independence, her determination to prove she could handle grown-up tasks. He sat on his bike in the rain, feeling 3 years of carefully suppressed grief threatening to overwhelm him. "Boss?" Doc pulled up beside him, concern evident even through his helmet's visor. "I'm fine," Thunder replied, though they both knew it was a lie. "Just, this kid reminds me of Katie." Doc nodded, understanding. Every member of the Iron Wolves knew Thunder's story, knew that their president's dedication to the club stemmed from a need to find purpose after losing everything that mattered. "Maybe that's why you got the message," Doc suggested. "Maybe Katie's still looking out for kids who need protecting." Thunder started his engine, the Harley's rumble cutting through the rain and wind. "Let's go find out." 1247. Oak Street stood in the kind of neighborhood where hope came in small doses and pride often meant going hungry rather than asking for help. The apartment building's exterior paint peeled like old skin, and several windows were covered with cardboard instead of glass. Thunder and his crew parked their motorcycles under a broken streetlight, their chrome and leather looking out of place among the rust and desperation. "Text her that we're here," Doc suggested, but Thunder's phone was already buzzing with an incoming message. "I see you through the window. Are you really going to help us?" Thunder looked up at the third-floor window, where a small face peered down at them through rain-streaked glass. Even from a distance, he could see the exhaustion in the child's posture, the weight of responsibility that bent her shoulders like an invisible burden. "We're coming up," he texted. "Don't be afraid." The building's front door hung askew on broken hinges, opening into a hallway that smelled of mildew, desperation, and the lingering scent of 100 different meals cooked on hot plates. Thunder led his crew upstairs that creaked ominously under their combined weight, noting the water stains on the ceiling and the gaps in the stair railing that spoke of a landlord who'd given up on maintenance years ago. Apartment 3B's door opened before Thunder could knock, revealing Alice Martinez in the flesh for the first time. 8 years old, as he'd guessed, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and eyes that held far too much knowledge for someone her age. She wore clothes that had been washed so many times the colors had faded to ghosts of their original brightness, and her feet were bare despite the cold. "You're really big," Alice said, looking up at Thunder's 6'4" frame with the matter-of-fact observation of a child who'd learned to assess adults quickly for potential threat or help. "And you're really brave," Thunder replied, kneeling so they could talk at eye level. "Texting a stranger to help your family takes courage." Alice bit her lip, uncertainty flickering across her features. "Mama says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers, but Tommy was crying because he was hungry, and we only have formula for 1 more bottle, and I didn't know what else to do." "Where is Tommy now?" Doc asked gently, his medical training evident in how he positioned himself to appear non-threatening. "Sleeping," finally. Alice stepped aside to let them into the apartment, though her body language remained ready to flee if needed. "He cries a lot when he's hungry, but I sang to him and he went to sleep." The apartment consisted of 3 rooms that had seen better decades. The living room held a couch with springs poking through worn fabric, a coffee table held together with duct tape, and a small television that looked older than Alice. But despite the poverty, everything was meticulously clean. Someone had worked hard to make this place as much of a home as possible, with no resources beyond determination and love. "Alice," Thunder said carefully, "how long has it been just you and Tommy during the night?" "Since Mama started the second job. About a month." Alice led them to a corner where a makeshift crib held a sleeping infant. Tommy Martinez was tiny, even for 4 months, his skin pale in a way that spoke of inadequate nutrition. "The diner job pays more, but it's at night, so someone has to watch Tommy." Tank whistled low, his expression mixing admiration with concern. 8 years old and you're running night shift childcare." "I'm very good at it," Alice said with fierce pride. "Tommy only cried once last week, and that was because he had a dirty diaper, and I was washing bottles so I couldn't change him right away." Wrench had been quietly surveying the apartment, his practical mind cataloguing problems and solutions. "Alice, what do you eat for dinner?" Nay, the question made Alice's cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Peanut butter sandwiches, mostly. Sometimes ramen noodles if we have them. Mama brings leftover rolls from the diner when she can, but her boss doesn't like it when food goes missing." Thunder felt the familiar rage building in his chest, not at Alice or her mother, but at a world that could allow a family to struggle this desperately while having the audacity to function normally around them. "When did you last have a real meal? Meat, vegetables, something hot?" Alice considered this seriously. "Tuesday. Mama made scrambled eggs because they were on sale at the grocery store. We shared them." "Tuesday," Doc repeated quietly. "Alice, what day is it today?" "Saturday. 4 days." An 8-year-old child had been surviving on peanut butter sandwiches and taking care of an infant for 4 days, while her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep them housed. "Alice," Thunder said, his voice carrying the gentle authority he'd once used with his own daughter, "we're going to fix this, all of it. But first, Tommy needs formula, and you need real food." "I can pay you back," Alice said quickly. "I'm saving my allowance, and I found 53 cents in the couch cushions yesterday." Thunder's heart shattered completely. "Sweetheart, family doesn't charge family for help, and as of right now, you're family." Alice stared at him with the suspicion of a child who'd learned that adult promises often came with conditions or disappointment. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you and Tommy and your mama are under the protection of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. We take care of our own, and we don't abandon the people we choose to protect." "But you don't even know us," Tank spoke up, his massive frame somehow managing to convey gentleness despite his intimidating appearance. "Little girl, we know enough. We know you love your brother enough to text strangers for help. We know your mama's working herself to death trying to provide. We know you're handling responsibilities that would break most adults. That's all we need to know," Wrench added, already pulling cash from his wallet. "The rest we'll figure out as we go." Alice looked between the 4 leather-clad bikers who'd invaded her tiny apartment, her 8-year-old mind struggling to process the possibility that help had actually arrived. "Are you angels?" Thunder laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd produced in 3 years. "Sweetheart, we're about as far from angels as you can get. But sometimes the best help comes from the most unexpected places." In the makeshift crib, Tommy stirred and began to cry, the thin, desperate wail of an infant whose needs exceeded his family's ability to meet them. Alice moved immediately toward her brother, but Thunder caught her gently by the shoulder. "Let me," he said softly. "It's been a while, but I remember how." As Thunder lifted the tiny boy with practiced ease, Alice watched with amazement. For the first time in weeks, someone else was carrying the weight of Tommy's needs. For the first time since her father had disappeared, leaving them with nothing but debt and desperation, Alice felt like maybe they weren't completely alone in the world. While Thunder fed Tommy with a bottle Doc had prepared using the last of their formula, Wrench and Tank transformed the apartment into something resembling a command center. Tank worked his phone, coordinating with other Iron Wolves members who were already mobilizing resources across 3 counties, while Wrench made a detailed inventory of immediate needs. "Okay, little bit," Tank said, kneeling beside Alice, who watched everything with wide eyes. "We need to know exactly what your family needs. Not just tonight, but to get stable." Alice chewed her lip thoughtfully. "Tommy needs more formula. The doctor said the expensive kind because his stomach is sensitive. And diapers. We're almost out. And maybe some baby food because Mama wants to start giving him real food soon." "What about you?" Doc asked gently. "What do you need?" "I'm okay," Alice said automatically, the response of a child who'd learned not to be a burden. "Alice," Thunder said from where he sat feeding Tommy, "part of being family means being honest about needs. What would make things easier for you?" Alice was quiet for a long moment, watching Tommy drink his bottle with the contentment of a fed infant. "Sometimes I get really scared at night when Tommy cries and I can't make him stop. And sometimes I wish I had help with my homework because I don't understand fractions and Mama's too tired to help when she gets home." Wrench made notes on his phone. "What else?" "The heater doesn't work very good, so Tommy gets cold at night. I put all our blankets on him, but then I get cold. And..." Alice's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes I pretend I'm sick so I don't have to go to school because the other kids ask questions about why I'm always tired and why I don't have lunch money." Thunder felt something shift in his chest, a protective instinct that had been dormant since Katie's death, suddenly roaring back to life. "Alice, how often do you miss school?" "Just when Tommy's really fussy and I don't sleep much. Maybe once a week." Tank and Doc exchanged glances. A child missing that much school would eventually attract attention from truancy officers and social services, attention that could destroy this family even while trying to help it. "Here's what we're going to do," Thunder announced, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to making decisions that affected people's lives. "Tank, call Martha Peterson. Tell her we need an emergency grocery delivery. Formula, baby food, diapers, real food for Alice and her mom." "On it, boss." "Doc, that space heater in your garage, bring it over here tonight, and grab some of those baby blankets your wife keeps making for the charity drives. Consider it done. Wrench, I want a full background check on Sarah Martinez, employment history, the ex-husband situation, any legal issues we need to know about. If we're going to help this family, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Alice had been listening to the rapid-fire planning with growing amazement. "You're really going to help us? All of this isn't just because you feel sorry for us?" Thunder handed Tommy back to Alice, watching as she automatically adjusted her hold to support the infant's head properly. "Alice, 3 years ago I lost my daughter. She was 8 years old, just like you. Smart, brave, always trying to take care of everyone around her." Alice's eyes widened. "What happened to her?" "Car accident. Her and her mama both." Thunder's voice carried the weight of grief that never fully healed. "I couldn't save them, but maybe I can save you and Tommy and your mama. Is that why you answered my text? Because of your daughter?" Thunder considered the question seriously. "Maybe. Or maybe she's watching out for kids who need protecting, and she made sure your message found someone who could help." Alice was quiet for several minutes, processing this information with the seriousness of a child forced to think like an adult. "If your daughter was watching, I think she'd be proud of you." The words hit Thunder like a physical blow, but a healing one. For 3 years, he'd wondered what Katie would think of the man he'd become, whether she'd recognize the father who'd once pushed her on swings in the man who now led a motorcycle club through the darker corners of society. "Boss," Tank announced from across the room, "Martha's loading up the truck now. She'll be here within the hour with enough supplies to get this family stable for at least a month. And I've got the heater," Doc added. "Plus Maria did send over a whole bag of baby stuff she's been collecting. Clothes, blankets, toys, the works." Wrench looked up from his phone. "Preliminary search shows Sarah Martinez, 26, no criminal record, excellent employment references from both jobs. Ex-husband Marcus Rodriguez filed for divorce 6 months ago, cleaned out their joint accounts, and disappeared. No child support payments, no forwarding address." The picture was becoming clearer. a young mother abandoned with an infant and an 8-year-old, working 2 jobs just to afford basic housing, while her daughter carried responsibilities no child should bear. "What happens when Mama gets home and finds you here?" Alice asked, practical concern evident in her voice. Thunder smiled. "We explain that her daughter is a hero who saved her family by asking for help when they needed it most. What if she doesn't want help from strangers? Then we explain that we're not strangers anymore. We're family, and family doesn't let family struggle alone." As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Alice tensed, recognizing her mother's tired tread on the stairs. "That's Mama," Alice whispered. "She's early." Thunder stood, his imposing frame suddenly feeling less like protection and more like potential threat to a mother who'd find 4 strange men in her apartment with her children. "Alice, what's the best way to explain this so your mama doesn't panic?" Alice considered this with 8-year-old practicality. "Tell her I texted the wrong number, but found the right people instead." The door handle turned, and Sarah Martinez stepped into her apartment to find her daughter holding her son, while 4 members of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club stood among grocery bags, baby supplies, and what appeared to be the answer to prayers she'd been too proud to voice aloud. Sarah Martinez froze in the doorway, her tired mind struggling to process the scene before her. 4 massive men in leather jackets stood in her tiny living room, surrounded by grocery bags and baby supplies that represented more resources than she'd seen in months. Her daughter Alice sat calmly feeding Tommy, while strangers had somehow transformed their desperate situation into something resembling stability. "Alice," Sarah said carefully, her voice mixing exhaustion with protective alarm, "what's happening here?" "Mama, I texted the wrong number asking for help with Tommy's formula," Alice explained with 8-year-old directness. "But it turned out to be the right number because these are good people who help families." Thunder stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and non-threatening. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm James Jackson. Your daughter reached out for help and we responded. We're not here to cause problems, we're here to solve them." Sarah's eyes moved from the strangers to the abundance of supplies, then to her daughter's face, which showed more peace than she'd seen in weeks. "I don't understand. Who are you people?" "Who are?" We're the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club," Doc said gently. "And your daughter just showed us what real courage looks like, asking for help when her family needed it." "I can't accept charity," Sarah said automatically, pride warring with desperate need. "Good thing this isn't charity," Tank replied. "This is community. Alice is now under our protection, which means you and Tommy are too. We take care of our own." Sarah looked around her apartment, noting the space heater humming warmly in the corner, the boxes of formula and diapers, the bag of groceries that would feed them for weeks. "I can't pay you back for all this." "Nobody's asking you to pay anything back," Thunder said. "Alice, tell your mama what we talked about." Alice shifted Tommy to her shoulder, patting his back with practiced skill. "He said family doesn't charge family, Mama, and that we're family now because I was brave enough to ask for help." Sarah's composure finally cracked, tears flowing as weeks of suppressed fear and exhaustion overwhelmed her. "I've been trying so hard to handle everything alone. 2 jobs, the bills, taking care of the kids. I didn't know Alice was texting strangers." "She wasn't texting strangers," Wrench said quietly. "She was texting family she hadn't met yet." Thunder knelt beside Sarah's chair. "Sarah, your daughter has been taking care of Tommy alone every night while you work. She's missing school, going hungry, carrying responsibilities that would break most adults. But she never complained, never gave up, never stopped protecting her little brother." "I know," Sarah whispered. "I know she's doing too much, but I don't have choices. Daycare costs more than I make. And family. There's no one left who can help." "There is now," Doc said firmly. "Starting tonight, Alice doesn't handle Tommy alone anymore." 3 weeks later, Millbrook witnessed a transformation that challenged every assumption the town had held about motorcycle clubs and the families they chose to protect. What had begun with a wrong number text had evolved into something resembling an extended family operation, with Iron Wolves members integrated into the Martinez family's daily routine. Alice arrived home from school each afternoon to find Tank or Doc already in the apartment, helping with Tommy's care and ensuring she could focus on being 8 years old instead of a surrogate parent. Her grades had improved dramatically once she could sleep through the night and attend school regularly. "Alice, how was the math test?" Tank asked as she dropped her backpack by the door. "I got a B+, Alice announced proudly. "Mrs. Peterson said my fractions are really improving since I started getting help with homework." Tommy, now thriving on consistent nutrition and medical care, giggled from his high chair as Alice kissed his forehead. At 6 months, he'd grown from the pale, underweight infant the bikers had first met into a healthy baby with bright eyes and chubby cheeks. "Where's Mama?" Alice asked, noting the absence of exhausted stress that had once permeated their home. "At her interview," Doc replied with a smile. "Thunder pulled some strings with a construction company that needed an office manager, regular hours, good pay, health insurance." Alice's eyes widened. She might get a new job. "Better than that," Tank said, his phone buzzing with an incoming text. "She got the job. Starts Monday." She saw. The celebration was interrupted by Thunder's arrival, his massive frame filling the doorway as he carried groceries and what appeared to be legal documents. "Good news and better news," Thunder announced. "Good news is Sarah officially got the office job. Better news is Wrench found her ex-husband." Alice's expression grew serious. "Is he coming back?" "No, sweetheart, but he's going to start paying child support like he should have been all along. Turns out he's been working under his real name in Nevada, making good money while his family went hungry." "How much money?" Alice asked, with the practicality of a child who'd learned to count every dollar. Thunder smiled. "Enough to make sure you and Tommy never go hungry again. Enough for your mama to work 1 job instead of 2. Enough for you to be a kid instead of a caregiver." Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, her face glowing with the first genuine happiness Alice had seen in months. "I got it," she announced, sweeping Alice into a hug. "Regular hours, decent pay, and they even have on-site childcare for Tommy. And there's more," Thunder said, holding up the legal documents. "Your ex-husband owes you 18 months of back child support, plus ongoing payments. My lawyer filed the paperwork this morning." Sarah stared at the papers with disbelief. "How is this possible?" "I tried to find him for months." "You didn't have a motorcycle club's resources," Doc explained. "We have connections in every state, people who owe favors, ways of finding information that regular folks don't have access to." Alice looked around at the men who'd transformed her family's life through simple acts of caring and community. "Does this mean you won't come visit anymore since we don't need help now?" Tank's expression grew serious. "Little bit. You think family stops being family just because times get easier?" "I don't know," Alice admitted. "I never had this much family before." Thunder knelt to her level. "Alice, you taught us something important. You showed us that asking for help when you need it isn't weakness. It's courage. And you reminded us that protecting people who can't protect themselves is what makes us more than just men with motorcycles. So you'll still be our family?" "Forever," Doc promised. "Iron Wolves don't abandon the people we choose to protect." 6 months after a wrong number text changed everything, Alice Martinez stood before her 3rd-grade class presenting a project about heroes. Behind her, a poster displayed photos of firefighters, doctors, soldiers, and 4 leather-clad bikers who'd answered a desperate child's plea for help. "Heroes don't always look like you expect," Alice read from her carefully written report. "Sometimes they look scary on the outside, but have really good hearts. Sometimes they ride motorcycles and wear leather jackets, but they still help families and protect children." Mrs. Peterson smiled as Alice continued, "My heroes are Thunder, Tank, Doc, and Wrench from the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. When my family needed help and nobody else could help us, they became our family and saved us." After school, Alice found Thunder waiting in the parking lot beside his gleaming Harley, just as he had every Friday for months. Other parents no longer stared or whispered. They'd learned that the intimidating biker was simply a man picking up a child he'd chosen to protect. "How'd the presentation go?" Thunder asked as Alice climbed into his truck. "Good. Tommy Rodriguez said motorcycle clubs were all bad people, but I told him he was wrong. I said you were the best people I know." Thunder felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the healing ache of a heart that had learned to love again. What did Mrs. Peterson think? "She said my project taught her something important about not judging people by how they look." They drove to the community center where the Iron Wolves had organized their monthly family day, an event that had grown to include dozens of local families who'd learned that the fearsome motorcycle club was actually a network of men dedicated to protecting the vulnerable. Sarah waved from across the parking lot where she supervised Tommy's first attempts at walking. Her new job had brought stability and confidence that transformed her from a desperate single mother into a woman who could envision a future for her children. "Thunder," Alice said as they walked toward the gathering, "can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you think your daughter Katie would like me?" Thunder stopped walking, overwhelmed by the question he'd never expected but somehow always hoped for. "Alice, I think Katie sent you to us because she knew we needed each other. I think she'd love you exactly as much as I do." "Good," Alice said with satisfaction, "because I love you too, all of you." The community center filled with the sounds of children playing, families sharing meals, and men who'd found redemption in the simple act of choosing to care. Alice ran toward the playground, where other children waited, her laughter mixing with the rumble of motorcycles and the conversations of people who'd learned that family was defined not by blood, but by the willingness to show up when needed. Thunder watched her go, his phone buzzing with a text from an unknown number. "Please help us. My sister is sick and we don't have money for medicine." He smiled, already reaching for his phone to respond. The Iron Wolves had learned that wrong numbers sometimes led to exactly the right people. The cycle of protection and healing continued, one text message at a time.